A strange gift from Aunt Lorna. It came in a cardboard box that smelled like pennies and mildew. No return address, no postage. Just sitting on the porch, waiting. Inside, nestled in yellowed tissue paper, was the doll. Cotton-bodied, porcelain hands. Big, glassy eyes the color of spoiled milk. Her stitched smile had unraveled slightly on one side, giving the illusion of a smirk. The kind a child draws when they want their monster to look polite. It wore a sky-blue dress with tiny white buttons, one missing. Its shoes were soft velvet, too clean, too untouched. Sarah liked it immediately. She named her Mara, which was the first mistake. Their mom didn't say much about the doll except to ask twice where it came from. Her voice changed just a little. Softer, careful, like walking barefoot over broken glass. Aunt Lorna had died 7 months ago. Cancer, slow and mean, she hadn't sent anything. They should have burned the doll then, but they didn't. That night, the air in the house felt too still, like the walls were waiting for something. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked slower. Their mother moved through the kitchen with her lips pressed tight, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Mara sat perfectly upright in Sarah's arms during dinner, eyes wide, watching. By 10 p.m., Sarah tucked her into a little blanket at the foot of the bed. By midnight, the blanket had slid to the floor. By 2:45, the doll was sitting in the hallway. And at 3:13, someone whispered Sarah's name through the bedroom door. That's how it started. Or at least, that's the part I can say out loud. You probably won't survive this one. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It started like most horror stories do, with love. The doll's first night. Sarah was a heavy sleeper, always had been. But that night something stirred her just before 3 a.m. She blinked up at the ceiling fan, its blades unmoving in the thick heat. Her room felt like it was holding its breath, the kind of quiet that pushes against your eardrums, not empty, crowded. She sat up, rubbed her eyes. The doll wasn't at the foot of the bed anymore. She glanced toward the floor, expecting to see Mara tangled in the blanket she'd been swaddled in. Nothing there. Instead, the door was cracked, and something small sat just beyond it in the dark hallway. Legs crossed, hands folded, head tilted too far to the left. Sarah called out soft at first, "Mom?" No answer. Then she whispered it again, "Mom, Mara's in the hall." That's when she heard it, a whisper, impossibly close, like someone had cupped their hands around the door frame and breathed it right through the wood. Sarah. Not loud, but clear, and not the kind of voice that asks. It knew her name, it tasted it. She froze, skin prickling, the hairs on her arms standing straight up like they wanted to run without her. She swung her legs off the bed, slowly, bare feet brushing against the cool floorboards. The hallway light was off, but just enough moonlight bled through the window to outline Mara's head and shoulders, and the thin shadow stretching behind her. Sarah picked her up, not even thinking. The doll was warm, not just body temperature warm, alive warm, like someone had been holding it close. She tucked it back into bed, heart hammering in her throat. She didn't scream, didn't wake Mom. She didn't tell anyone about the voice. And when she finally fell asleep again, Mara was facing her, arms open, smile wider than before. Don't name it. The next morning, their mother made pancakes. Blueberry, Sarah's favorite. She set the plate down without meeting anyone's eyes. Mara had a fun night, Sarah chirped, dragging the doll onto her lap. Its head lolled sideways like it was listening. Their mom froze, spatula midair. What did you call it? Mara. Sarah beamed. She likes the name. A pause, then too soft. You shouldn't name things like that. Sarah blinked. Why? You just shouldn't. Their mother dropped the spatula, grease popping against the stove. She didn't eat, just sipped lukewarm coffee and stared at the backyard like something was watching from the trees. Later in the laundry room, Sarah heard her muttering. Low, whispered words behind a closed door. Words that didn't quite sound like English. She heard her say, "Not again." That night, Sarah made Mara a pillow from a sock and gave her the spot closest to the window. She likes watching the moon, she whispered. Don't you, Mara? The doll didn't answer, not with words. But its eyes, once murky and dull, seemed clearer now. Too clear. The glass reflected light even when the room was dark. At bedtime, Mom tucked Sarah in, her voice strained. We don't name old things, baby. You remember that, okay? Why? Names make them real. Sarah laughed. Thought it was a joke, but her mother's hands were trembling. Later, after the lights went out, Mara whispered back, just one word, real. Sarah thought maybe she'd dreamed it. But when she looked in the morning, Mara was sitting upright in the pink rocking chair near the door, the one no one ever used. Rocking slowly just once, as if to say, thanks for naming me. The little pink rocking chair. It was old. Pale wood turned soft and splintery from years of use. A gift from a neighbor long before Sarah was born. It had belonged to a girl who moved away. Nobody ever sat in it. It always sat tucked in the corner of Sarah's room, a silent placeholder. Until the doll came. Then, it started moving. Nothing dramatic. No fast, creaking swings like in movies, just small things. Subtle things. On the third night, Sarah woke up to find the chair turned. Not toward the bed like usual, but toward the door, facing out, as if Mara had been watching for someone. The next night, it faced the window. The night after that, back to the bed. Mara sitting on it, arms stiff at her sides, head slightly tilted, and just a little closer than she'd been before. Their mom noticed too. She stopped outside the room once, stared at the chair, then closed the door without saying goodnight. That's when Sarah started hearing scraping. Around 2 or 3 in the morning. Just a soft dragging sound, like something being pushed inch by inch across hardwood. Once she sat up and turned on her lamp fast enough to catch the chair mid-pivot, maybe an inch from where it was the night before. Mara was already on it, smiling, always smiling. Sarah asked her mom to take the chair out. Her mom said nothing, just walked into the room after school, picked up the chair and carried it out into the hallway. She shoved it into the closet, slammed the door, didn't explain. That night, the chair was back. Mara was in it, and Sarah was sure she hadn't been asleep long enough for anything to move. The door stayed locked. No one else had come in. And in the morning, Sarah found a tiny splinter buried under her fingernail. Not wood. Porcelain. Missing time. The school called around noon. Just checking, the receptionist said, voice too chipper. Was Sarah supposed to leave early today? She hadn't, but Sarah was gone. No one saw her leave the building. Her backpack was still in her cubby. Lunch untouched in the insulated bag. They found her 30 minutes later, sitting cross-legged behind the boiler room, eyes glazed, barefoot. No idea how she got there. The soles of her feet were scraped raw, like she'd been dragged. She clutched Mara to her chest with both arms, tight, protective, and her right hand was bleeding. Not a cut, not exactly. More like peeling in a small circular patch the size of a button. Layers of skin rubbed away, red and wet, like something had been twisting itself in. At home, her mom washed the wound in silence. When Sarah asked what happened, her mom only whispered, "Sometimes things borrow you just for a little while." Sarah didn't ask what that meant. She couldn't stop staring at the doll. Mara looked older somehow. Not dusty or worn, but different. The stitching around her arms was tighter, neater, like someone had recently redone it. Her dress was damp at the bottom. The fabric stuck to Sarah's fingers when she touched it. It smelled like the inside of the well behind the church, the one sealed with rusted chains. By bedtime, Sarah had started to twitch. Not her whole body, just her fingers. Little spasms, like the nerves were trying to remember something her brain couldn't. She told her mom she was cold, but the thermometer read 90 in her room. That night she dreamt of stairs. A spiral staircase made of bone, going down forever. Mara led the way. When she woke up, there were crescent-shaped bruises on her thighs. The kind you get when someone holds you too tight. The voice in the vent. Sarah stopped sleeping after that. She tried, curled up in bed, blanket over her head, Mara at her feet like a guard dog with button eyes. But the second her eyes shut, the vent began to hum. It started soft, like wind. Then beneath the white noise, a tune. A lullaby. Old, off-key, and sung by a voice that didn't belong to anyone in the house. Raspy. Female. thick with saliva like it was singing through a closed throat. "Rockabye babies in the tree's top." Sarah's breath caught in her chest. The sound came from the wall above her desk, the narrow grate where the heating vent hadn't worked in years. She told herself it was pipes, settling, maybe mice. But then it started whispering names, not just hers, her classmates, her mom's maiden name, even the dog they'd buried when she was 5. Sometimes it would ask questions. "Where's the key? Who did you tell? Do you remember the crawl space?" And once, only once, it said, "She's almost ready." That night, Sarah shoved socks into the vent slats. The next morning, they were gone. Not just pushed in, gone like they'd dissolved into the metal, and something new had been left behind. Pressed against the bottom of the vent was a small photograph. A girl, maybe 9, pale, wearing a blue dress like Mara's. But it wasn't Sarah. The face was wrong, older, eyes empty. Her wrists were wrapped in red thread, the same thread Sarah had seen before, tied around Mara's waist in a loose little bow. She showed the photo to her mom. Her mom went pale, took the picture, burned it in the sink, said nothing. That night the singing returned, but now it had harmony. 2 voices in the wall, singing together. Crows don't come here. Their street was too clean for crows. Cookie-cutter suburbia, trimmed hedges, sprinklers on timers. The only birds that ever showed up were finches or the occasional nosy jay. But that morning one sat on the windowsill, big, black, rotting. Its beak was cracked down the middle like split wood. One glassy eye missing, the other cloudy and wet. It didn't move when Sarah opened the curtains. Didn't flinch when she tapped the glass, just stared. Its feathers were matted with something dark and sweet-smelling. Not blood, not exactly. She backed away slowly. Mara sat on her pillow now, facing the window as if waiting. When Sarah told her mom said nothing. Just closed her eyes and whispered something behind her teeth. A prayer, maybe. Then she locked the windows. But the next morning, another crow came. Then another. By Friday, 6 lined the sill. Then the porch railing, then the power lines. Silent, watching. One had a length of red thread wrapped around its leg. And when Sarah stepped outside, barefoot, drawn to the wrongness of it all, the nearest crow opened its mouth, and a whisper fell out. "Mara." No caw, no screech, just the name, too clear, too human. Sarah ran back inside. That night, her dreams were full of feathers and hollow eyes. A staircase slick with blood. And Mara, always Mara, holding something behind her back. The next day, one of the crows was dead on the porch, its beak gone, torn out. In its place, something had been stitched in. A little ceramic button, white, just like the ones on Mara's dress. The missing one was no longer missing. It was back on the doll, sewn perfectly in place. Sarah hadn't touched it. No one had. The whisper game. It was an old game, one kids made up on the bus or during sleepovers when they wanted to scare each other just enough. You sit in front of a mirror, candle lit, door shut, and you whisper your name 3 times. Then wait, someone whispers back. Except Sarah didn't have candles or a mirror, just a closet door, slightly cracked, and a dare from something that didn't speak out loud, but felt loud anyway. She played alone, Saturday night. Mom asleep on the couch with the TV buzzing static. Mara sat just behind her on the bed, head tilted. Smile cracked a little wider. Sarah knelt on the floor, hands in her lap, and whispered, "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." The air changed. It got thicker, sticky like warm milk gone sour. Her ears buzzed. The closet door creaked. And then, a voice from inside the closet. Not an echo, not her mom. A low whisper from deep in the wall. "That's not your name." Sarah's throat tightened, her knees ached. The closet creaked again. Something shifted inside. She reached out and pulled the door fully open. Nothing but shoes, dresses, old board games, and Mara, somehow now sitting just behind her when Sarah hadn't moved. She stared at the doll, and the doll blinked, one eye slow like a cat. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat up watching Mara, who now had her place on the pillow. She tried not to blink, afraid the doll would move when her eyes were shut. But at some point, she must have fallen asleep, because she woke up to a child's laugh in her ear. Mara was gone, and a second whisper came from beneath the bed. "Let's play again." Broken things stay broken. The next day, Sarah snapped. Not a tantrum, not a scream. Something quieter, more final. She sat on the kitchen floor with Mara in her lap and stared at the doll for a long time. Eyes, buttons, thread. Then she whispered, "You're not real," and twisted. Hard. The porcelain neck cracked with a soft pop. The head rolled to the floor like it had been waiting. One of the arms came loose in her hand. And inside, there was something. A string of hair. Brown. Too real, a small crusted tooth, and worst of all, a sliver of a torn photograph. A girl's face, smiling, one eye scratched out. Sarah shoved everything into a shoebox, sealed it with duct tape. Her mom didn't ask questions when Sarah walked outside barefoot, dragging a garden trowel. She just watched through the window, pale, unmoving. Sarah buried the doll under the elm tree out back, dug deep, tossed the dirt over it, stomped it flat, and whispered, "Stay dead." She didn't sleep that night, but she felt lighter. Until morning, when Mara was back, sitting in the pink rocking chair, her head intact, smile wider, dress clean, the missing button sewn tight across her chest, but not quite in place. Crooked, like a blind hand had rushed it. Sarah screamed. Her mom ran in, took one look, and just knelt beside the chair, started to cry. Not soft tears, not confused ones. Grief. Like she'd just seen someone she'd buried a long time ago. Then, still sobbing, she whispered, "She came back for you?" Sarah didn't ask who. Couldn't. Because Mara had turned her head. Not tilted. Turned. And was looking at her mother now. And smiling. Dream teeth. It started with a cough. Then two. Sarah sat up in bed, hand on her throat, feeling something thick and dry scrape the back of her tongue. She hacked hard, harder, until something hard and sharp flew into her palm. Not phlegm, not a crumb. A tooth. Small, pale yellow, not hers. Too tiny and too old. She stared at it in her hand. It had a tiny crack running down the middle, like it had once been chewed on from the inside. There was no blood, no pain. Her own teeth were all there, tongue running across them like inventory. So whose tooth was it? She held it up to the moonlight. It looked like a child's molar. Mara sat at the end of the bed, arms limp, dress wrinkled. Her mouth was just stitching, tight black thread sewn in a slight smile. But now something bulged beneath the stitches, like teeth behind the thread, pressing against the fabric. Sarah backed away, slipped off the bed. She put the tooth in her drawer, deep under some socks. It wasn't there in the morning. Instead, in its place sat a second tooth, smaller, pinkish at the root. That night the dream came. Sarah stood in a field of teeth. Not grass, teeth. Molar stems and jagged incisors blooming from the dirt. Above her the sky was stitched shut, and beneath her bare feet things moved. She saw Mara in the distance, walking backward, her face blank. Her mouth opened too wide, teeth spilling out like coins. When Sarah screamed, no sound came, just dust. She woke up gagging, something hard in her throat. Not a tooth this time. Baby spoon, silver. The handle read, "To Sarah with love," but the letters were carved backward, like it had been meant for someone else. To read from inside. Mirror test. They say if you want to know if something's real, you hold it up to a mirror. The reflection tells the truth even when your eyes won't. So Sarah tried it. One afternoon, when the house was empty and the crows had stopped showing up, she placed Mara in front of the bathroom mirror. Flat porcelain face, button eyes, sewn smile, still. She stared at the reflection for a long time, then blinked. Her own reflection blinked too. But the doll's did not. Mara's eyes, one in the mirror, blinked once. A slow, heavy close and open. Sarah turned around fast. The real doll hadn't moved. She turned back. The mirrored Mara was now smiling wider. Thread pulled impossibly tight like the stitches were fresh. Sarah staggered back, knocking the soap into the sink. It hit the drain, spun in circles. And when it stopped, it left behind a small smear of red. Not hers. She looked down, her hands were clean. But when she glanced up again, something else was in the reflection. Not behind her, not visible in the room. Just in the mirror, standing in the corner, tall and crooked, with joints bent backward and a face like an oil-slicked blur. Holding Mara in its arms, rocking her. Sarah spun around, nothing there. Turned back, and the figure was gone. But Mara was no longer sitting upright. She lay flat on the counter now, and her button eyes were missing. Two dark holes stared up at Sarah. and in the sink swirling down with the soap suds. One button, still spinning, still warm. She checked the doll again. The eyes were back, perfectly in place. But now, under the porcelain sheen, Sarah could swear they were wet. Aunt Lorna's house call. The doorbell rang just past twilight. 3 slow chimes, too far apart to be normal. Sarah's mom froze mid-step, spatula in hand, something frying behind her turning black. The doorbell rang again. Sarah peeked from the hallway. Her mom looked pale, like someone had drained all the color from her throat upward. She opened the door. And there stood Aunt Lorna, or something wearing her shape. She looked the same, almost. Same wild curls, same yellow cardigan she always wore in fall. But her skin hung too loose on her arms, like her bones had shrunk beneath it. Her mouth smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Oh, sweet girl," she whispered, reaching for Sarah with fingers that bent wrong. "It's been so long." Sarah didn't move. Her mom stepped between them, voice flat. "You're dead." Aunt Lorna blinked slowly. "Death's just another room." Then she laughed, short and shallow, like it didn't belong to her. "I didn't send the doll," she said. "I would never do that. You know that, don't you?" Sarah's mom was shaking now. "We burned the first one." "Oh, no, no, no," Aunt Lorna said, leaning in. "You buried it. That's not the same." Then her eyes flicked to Sarah. "She named this one, didn't she?" Sarah nodded without meaning to, her voice barely above a breath. "Mara." And Aunt Lorna's smile cracked. Not faded, cracked. The skin on her cheek split slightly, as if her face were made of dry plaster. "Of course she did," she said. "They always named the second one." Then she stepped back, down the porch, vanished into the dark like she'd never been there, except for one thing, a scrap of yellow cardigan caught in the doorframe. Still warm, still pulsing, and in the kitchen, the frying pan had caught fire. But the doll was already sitting on the table, unharmed, hands folded, watching the flames grow. The flooded basement. The water heater had been broken for years. Basement off limits. The kind of rule wrapped in silence and locked doors. Never spoken, but always enforced. But that night, the door was open, just swinging. Sarah stood at the top of the basement stairs in her socks, cold air crawling up past her ankles. Dripping sounds echoed from below, slow, rhythmic. Not water, not exactly. Each drop landed with weight, like it had a purpose. She called out, "Mom?" No answer. Mara stood behind her on the step, not in her hand, not where she'd left her. Just there, waiting. Sarah picked her up, something in her gut screaming not to, but her hands moved anyway. Down the stairs, one creaking step at a time. The deeper she went, the thicker the air became. Damp, foul, like rust and wet teeth. The light bulb overhead flickered once, then died. The floor was covered in water, shallow, ankle-deep, icy. Floating on top were things she didn't want to name. Hair, paper, bits of cloth. And photos. Hundreds. Soggy snapshots drifting across the water's surface. All of them of her. But not really. Smiling. Crying. In clothes she never remembered wearing, holding dolls she didn't recognize. One photo caught her eye. She lifted it with shaking fingers. A little girl, her face identical to Sarah's, staring up from a broken tricycle, hands tied with red thread, and beneath the photo, stuck to its wet back, was a name tag. "Hello, my name is Sarah." She stumbled backward, dropping the photo. It dissolved into the water like sugar. From behind the shelves came a soft giggle. A second voice whispered, "She's been here before." Sarah turned. And from the corner, a hand reached up out of the water, small, pale, doll-like. It waved, and vanished beneath the surface. The name game. They were just sounds. That's what her mom had always said. "Names are just sounds, Sarah. They don't mean anything unless you answer to them." But that was a lie. Names had power. Names called things back. Names opened doors. Sarah didn't want to play the game again. But Mara did. It started as a whisper. At first, she thought it was just wind through the cracked vent. Then she heard it again. Amara, Sadie, Sariel. 3 names. All soft, all breathy. Only one was hers, and she didn't know which. That night, her bedroom mirror fogged up. Not from heat, the window was open, the room cold, but from breath. Written in the steam was just one word. Choose. Sarah erased it with her sleeve. but it came back again the next morning. Choose. Everywhere she looked, scraps of paper, cereal box trivia, the spine of her notebook, she'd find one of the names scrawled somewhere. Sadie is under the bed. Zariel in chalk on the driveway. Amara the stitched faintly into Mara's dress hem. Her own name began to feel distant, like it belonged to someone else. The next night she dreamt of a circle. 3 dolls sat in it, each with her face. Each wore a tag: Amara, Sadie, Zariel. Only one looked up when she entered. Only one whispered, "Yui, you called us, you don't remember, but we remember you." Sarah ran from the dream, woke up sweating through her sheets, and Mara sat on her chest, button eyes close enough to touch. The doll whispered, "Pick wrong and you'll stay her." Sarah tried to speak, but her mouth was full of thread, pulled tight, her voice gone. 5 days missing. The police called on a Thursday, said Sarah had been found, which was strange, because no one had reported her missing. Except she was missing. For 5 days, her room sat untouched. Bed made, pajamas folded. No sign of struggle, no trace of her anywhere in the house. But no one noticed. Not her teachers, not the neighbors, not even her mom. Until she opened the freezer to grab a bag of peas and found Sarah's school ID frozen inside a block of ice. Still warm, she screamed, then remembered. She didn't have a daughter named Sarah. Did she? The police found the girl wandering in the woods near the edge of town. Feet bare, fingers red, dress soaked in creek water. She knew her name, knew her birthday. But when they asked where she lived, she said the attic. Said she had a sister named Mara. That's when they called the house. Her mother picked up. The voice on the other end asked if she had a child named Sarah. She opened her mouth, and nothing came out. No words, just a pressure behind her teeth, like a scream that wouldn't form. Because something in the house growled. Not a bear, not a dog. Something doll-sized, something jealous. When Sarah returned, her mother hugged her too tightly. She didn't remember her, not fully, but her body did. They took a picture together, a nice one. The next morning, Sarah was gone again. Not the girl, the picture. Erased from the phone, frame empty, no memory card. But Mara was holding a new photograph now, tucked in her lap, and in it Sarah sat beside her, staring out with hollow eyes, smile stitched, and one hand tied to the dolls with red thread. Dad starts digging. He hadn't been around much. The divorce left him in another zip code, another apartment, another life. But on Saturday morning, Sarah's dad showed up unannounced. No call, no knock. Just him on the front lawn with a shovel in his hand, staring at the elm tree, the one she'd buried the doll under weeks ago. He looked thinner than she remembered, grayer, like something had been feeding on him from the inside. When her mom opened the door, he didn't say hello. Just, "She told me to dig." No one asked who she was. He spent 4 hours tearing at the dirt. Didn't stop for water, didn't answer questions. By noon, he'd uncovered the shoebox, the one that should have been full of broken porcelain and cursed stuffing. But it wasn't. Inside was something else entirely. Teeth. Hundreds of them. Baby teeth. Tiny and smooth, arranged in spirals around a single cracked porcelain button. And beneath the button, a slip of paper, written in Sarah's handwriting. "You left me here," he screamed, dropped the box, backed away, hands trembling, muttering the same thing over and over. "She's not yours, she's hers." Sarah stood at the window, watching. Behind her, Mara sat upright on the windowsill, her mouth now unzipped, stitches unraveled, teeth visible. Too many teeth. Her mom tried to drag her dad inside, tried to hold him, but he only stared at Sarah, eyes wide, and said, "I saw your real face once." Then he dropped the shovel, walked to the car, never looked back. The next morning, the hole was gone, tree undisturbed, no box, no teeth. But Sarah found a tiny handprint on her bedroom wall, pressed into the paint, too small to be hers, too deep to be a stain, and it was pointing down, toward the floorboards. The rag in the freezer. The light in the freezer flickered when she opened it, just enough to make the frost seem alive. She wasn't even looking for anything, just wandering the kitchen after midnight, sleepwalking without sleep. That's when she saw it, tucked between a bag of peas and a box of waffles. A rag, old, gray with age, frozen stiff. Sarah reached in. The cold bit her fingers like teeth. She pulled it free. It was heavier than it looked. Wrapped tight, knotted in the middle like someone meant it to hide something. She sat at the table, unwrapping it layer by layer. First came the hair. Long strands, some brown, some black, a few blonde, tangled together and stiff with something that looked and smelled like sap. Then came the teeth, 7 of them, all small. One still had a trace of pink gum attached to the root. Then at the center, something stitched, a strip of cotton, baby blanket maybe, with writing along the hem, clumsy and childlike. If she wakes up, don't answer her name. Sarah dropped it, stumbled backward, the chair scraping across the floor like a scream. She ran to her mom's room, rag still in hand. Woke her, showed her. Her mom stared at the bundle like she was looking into a coffin. Then whispered, "I told your father to burn it." Sarah's voice shook. Burn what? But her mother didn't answer, just took the rag and placed it back in the freezer, turned the temp down 3 notches, and said, "Cold keeps her sleeping for a little while." That night the house was too quiet. Sarah checked the freezer at dawn. The rag was gone, but on the table sat Mara, holding the strip of blanket, smiling, and under her tongue, a new tooth, still wet. Smells like honey. The rot should have been unbearable. Dolls don't age gracefully, not in real life. They crack, they flake, they smell like dust and attic regret. But Mara, she started to smell sweet. Not flowers, not perfume. Honey, thick and golden and wrong. It clung to Sarah's clothes, stuck to the backs of her knees, coated her tongue in the mornings like she'd been licking spoonfuls in her sleep. She tried to throw Mara out again, wrapped the doll in 3 trash bags, shoved her into the outdoor bin, slammed the lid. But that night the smell came back stronger, like the air itself had been marinated in sugar. And her sheets? Sticky. Not sweat, not spilled juice. Honey. She found a small honeycomb on her nightstand. Perfect hexagons, glossy and oozing, with something moving inside the wax. She didn't open it. Didn't have to. Mara sat beside it, head tilted, one arm half detached as if someone had tried to pull her away and failed. Sarah screamed for her mother. She ran in half asleep, half panicked, but stopped when she saw the doll, eyes wide, breathing shallow. Then she whispered, like a prayer she hoped the walls wouldn't hear, "She's ripening." Sarah stared. What does that mean? Her mother didn't answer. She backed out of the room like she was afraid to turn her back on the doll. And later, Sarah saw her pouring bleach down the vents, praying under her breath. The next morning, bees were in the kitchen. Dead ones, dozens. Their wings still twitched, their eyes filmed over, and stuck to the fridge with a single needle was a note. "She's almost sweet enough." Sarah turned and found Mara hanging upside down from the ceiling fan, not tied, just holding on, smiling, as golden syrup dripped from her mouth, onto Sarah's pillow. Drop by sticky drop. Dolls shouldn't cry. It started just past midnight, a sound too soft to be real. Dripping maybe. A faucet left on, a window leaking. But when Sarah sat up, the room was bone dry. Except Mara was crying. Not loud, just a gentle whimper. Ragged little sobs as if something inside her had finally broken loose. Her button eyes stayed fixed. Her sewn smile didn't move, but the sound came from her body. Wet hiccuping cries. Too human, too young. Sarah froze. Her spine locked like someone had poured ice water down it. She reached over and touched the doll's dress. It was damp, soaked through the cotton, and when she lifted it, her fingers came away slick with something clear and salty. Tears. Mara was crying tears. Sarah backed away slowly. Her foot bumped the dresser, sending a loose drawer rattling open. The crying stopped, for half a second. Then it grew louder. Not just sobbing now, wailing. Mara shook in place, her limbs twitching in tiny bursts. Her mouth began to stretch, thread creaking as it pulled apart one stitch at a time. Sarah screamed. Her mother rushed in, stopped at the door, and whispered, "Don't let her know you're scared." Sarah turned to her. "She's crying, and what do I do?" Her mother didn't move. "I don't know," she said. Last time she didn't cry, she screamed. Mara stood up. On her own. No strings, no wires. She walked to the window and stared out at the yard, then sat back down on the pink rocking chair. Still sobbing, a small puddle of tears formed beneath her. In it, Sarah saw her own reflection, but older, eyes blank, mouth sewn shut, and Mara's voice whispered, "You're next." Red thread around her wrists. Sarah woke up bleeding, not a lot, just enough to stain the sleeves of her pajama top. The fabric clung to her skin. When she peeled it back, the pain hit. Raw, burning, immediate. Red thread, wrapped tightly around each wrist. 2 loops, then a knot. Pulled so tight the skin beneath had split. It wasn't just tied, it was sewn in. Like someone had taken a needle and worked it through her, stitch by stitch. There were no scissors, no shears. Just her bedroom mirror fogged at the edges, and Mara sitting on her desk, legs swinging, dress pristine, smile too wide. The needle lay on the floor. Thin, silver, sticky, thread still attached. Sarah staggered to the bathroom. She tried to cut the string with her teeth, but it only pulled tighter, bit deeper. The more she struggled, the more the thread moved. It pulsed like a heartbeat, like something alive. She screamed for her mom. No answer. Ran to her mother's bedroom. Empty. Still warm. The sheets were pulled halfway off the mattress. A trail of red thread led from the bed into the attic. Sarah didn't follow. Couldn't. She collapsed in the hallway, wrists throbbing, lips trembling. Mara's tiny voice whispered from behind her, barely more than breath. "You gave me your name, I'm giving you mine." Then silence. The thread stopped moving. Sarah lay there, arms numb, vision swaying. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, something rocked back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth. Then the softest sound. Snip. Like scissors cutting thread. And the pain stopped. She looked down. Her wrists were free, but the thread wasn't gone. It lay on the floor beside her, coiled in the shape of a name. Oh, Sarah. But the S was backwards, as if it had been written by someone inside the mirror. Let's breathe for a moment. Let the air settle. You've been walking with her through a place most people never return from. Place of red thread, old teeth, and dolls that remember you before you're even born. But for now, the stitches are loose, the rocking has stopped. The house is quiet. Sarah isn't safe. Not yet. But the night has softened. Sometimes surviving until morning is enough. So close your eyes. Let the quiet wrap around you like a warm blanket. And if something whispers your name tonight, don't answer. Not the first time, not the second, and never the third. Here we go with our next story. The thing in the crawlspace. Sarah hadn't gone into the crawlspace since she was little. Back then, it was just a weird place her dad used to store Christmas bins and old tax papers. Low ceiling, cold dirt floor, one dangling bulb that barely worked. Now it was calling her. Not out loud, not exactly, but the red thread that had once bled from her wrists now trailed across her bedroom floor. Under the bed, into the hall, and straight to the little wooden door beside the linen closet. The crawl space. It pulsed. Not metaphorically, it literally pulsed, like it had a heartbeat. Sarah opened the door slowly. The smell hit her first. Not rot, not mold. Powder, vanilla, old blanket soaked in honey. Mara sat just inside, legs straight, hands resting in her lap like she was waiting for story time. Behind her, something moved. Not fast, not sudden, just enough to shift the air. Sarah got on her hands and knees, crawled inside. The light bulb flickered above her, then popped. Darkness swallowed the space. But Sarah saw it anyway, a shape curled in the back corner. Wrong-shaped, human-sized, but not human. Too many joints. Limbs too long, folded like a marionette without strings. Its head tilted as it breathed, fast, wet, shallow. Sarah whispered, "Who are you?" The shape uncurled, and whispered back, "I was you first." A hand reached forward, pale, doll-like, sewn at the wrist. It held a small music box, carved with her name. Not just etched, carved inward, as if it had come from the inside out. The lid opened. The lullaby from the vent began to play, slow and off-key. The thing in the corner smiled, its mouth stitched, but twitching, as if something inside it was trying to speak, but didn't have a voice yet. Mara turned her head and said, "She's almost ready. Word count 442. The character count 2816. You awaiting continue." The other sister. Sarah didn't remember ever having a sister. Not until now. She saw her first in a photo, tucked behind a cracked baseboard in the crawlspace. It was old, yellowed at the corners, water-stained, but clear enough to make out the faces. 2 girls. One was Sarah, at least, and it looked like her. Same eyes, same haircut, same toothy smile. The other was wrong. Same smile, too wide. Same face, but slightly off. A little longer. Eyes too far apart. Limbs bent, not in motion, but in place. Like someone had assembled her from memory and didn't get the scale right. Both girls held dolls, Mara in Sarah's arms, and something bigger in the other girls. Something with arms that bent in 4 places. Behind them, the pink rocking chair, the old elm tree, in the exact same pose as a photo on the fridge from last year. Except in that one, Sarah stood alone. She took both pictures, laid them side by side. 2 near-identical shots. 2 girls in one girl in the other. She brought the photos to her mom. Her mother didn't speak, just touched the second girl's face with a trembling finger, then whispered, "That was Sariel." Sarah's blood went cold. "You said I was named after a song." Her mom shook her head. "I gave you that name." She wouldn't say why, wouldn't say what happened to Sariel. But that night Sarah woke up to scratching. Not on the wall, not under the bed, inside the mirror. The reflection was still, but Sarah could see movement behind it. Someone pacing, something waiting. And when she turned around, Mara was gone. But the girl from the photo was sitting at the foot of her bed. Same face. Too many joints. And she whispered, "You're the copy, I'm the kept one." Whispers from the school intercom. It was the first day Sarah went back to school since the red thread, the crawl space, the crying doll. She felt floaty, like her shoes weren't quite touching the floor. Teachers looked at her like they were supposed to remember something, and couldn't. Her best friend Maya smiled like everything was normal. "Glad you're back, Sadie," she said. Sarah blinked. "What did you call me?" Maya frowned. "Your name, like always." Everyone called her that. All day, Sadie. Like her real name had been peeled off and tossed. By lunch, she wasn't sure if she'd ever been called Sarah at all. At 12:33 p.m., the intercom screeched. Not the usual feedback buzz. This was sharper, hungrier. Then it clicked on, and someone whispered, "She's walking the halls again." Every head lifted. Every eye turned to the ceiling speaker. Dead silence followed. Then the voice came back. Still soft, still too close. But it spoke 3 names. Amara, Sadie, Sariel. Only one was hers. She didn't know which anymore. The principal ran into the cafeteria, flushed, panicked. "Everyone stay calm, just a technical glitch." But no one moved. Because the voice wasn't done. It laughed. Like a girl pretending not to cry. Then whispered, "The one who answers stays." Sarah didn't breathe. Didn't blink. She kept her lips shut while the room sat frozen. Waiting. Someone near the vending machines murmured, "Sadie?" And the intercom flared again. "That's the one." Every speaker in the school clicked off at once. The fire alarm didn't go off, but all the clocks stopped. Exactly 12:33. Sarah stood. Everyone stared. Even the teachers. No one said a word. But from the darkened ceiling vents above her came the sound of a music box winding, slowing, then stopping. Playdate in the attic. The attic had always been off limits. Too many nails, too much dust. That's what her mom used to say, long before the honey started dripping from the light fixtures and the house began breathing between its walls. But now the attic door hung open. The ladder extended down like a tongue, and tied to the bottom rung was a red thread. Sarah followed it. Her hands didn't shake anymore, that scared her most. She climbed the ladder barefoot, every step sticky with something sweet and old. The air above was thick, syrupy. Dust clung to her eyelashes like ash. She ducked into the space and blinked through the dark. Dozens of dolls sat in a circle. Old handmade, porcelain and cloth, all with stitched mouths, all with button eyes. And in the center, Mara, rocking gently on a little chair that hadn't been there before. Sarah recognized it. It was hers, the one her dad had built for her 2nd birthday. But it was smaller now, sized for Mara, ready for what came next. "Sit," Mara whispered. The dolls shifted slightly, making space. Sarah moved forward, not of her own will. Her knees folded. The attic floor moaned beneath her. Across from her sat the girl. The one from the photo, Sariel or Sadie or Amara. The other her, joints too bendy, smile too stitched. She held a doll in her lap, one that looked like Sarah, and spoke without opening her mouth. "You were supposed to be pretend." The other dolls began to rock. Their heads turned in unison. The air filled with the sound of 100 threads being pulled through fabric. And the girl leaned forward and said, "You took my name, so now you take my place." Sarah reached for the ladder. It was gone. Just darkness where the opening had been, and the dolls began to laugh. Only one rule left. They didn't speak it out loud. The dolls, the girl, even Mara, they just stared, waiting, rocking, smiling without moving their mouths. Sarah sat frozen on the attic floor, thread coiled around her ankles now, around her wrists, around the base of her neck like a silk leash. She remembered her mom's voice once, when things were still mostly safe. We don't name old things. But that wasn't the last rule. Not really. That was the first. The last one? She'd never said it. Because it was the one you were supposed to know by instinct. Like how you don't touch fire, or stare too long at something in the mirror that isn't quite right. But Sarah knew now, felt it crawling down her spine. Don't answer if it bleeds. The girl across the circle, the almost Sarah, the twisted twin, had started to leak. Not cry, leak. Thin trails of red syrup, not quite blood, not quite honey, ran from the corners of her stitched mouth. It soaked the front of her doll-sized dress, dripped in steady beats onto the attic floor. The other dolls bent their heads in reverence, as if this bleeding meant something holy. Mara stood, walked to Sarah with those stiff, perfect little legs, placed a porcelain hand on her chest, and whispered, "She has your name, you have her place." Then turned her head all the way around, slow, creaking, until it faced the bleeding girl. And Sarah, despite everything, despite the scream trapped in her throat, whispered, "What happens if I don't answer?" The girl smiled and said, "Then I wear your face longer." Thread tightened. A loop closed around Sarah's throat, and something shifted behind her eyes, like her reflection had just stood up, without her. A name for every doll. They started to move the moment she spoke. Not just Mara, not just the girl with her face. All of them. The dolls in the circle, their joints clicked as they turned. Heads pivoting, fingers twitching. Some opened their mouths, seams unraveling, tiny fabric tongues lolling like wet thread. Each one whispered a different name. Not to her, to each other. One by one, they passed the words around like candy. Amara, Lusadie, Lucerial, Dejune, Cass, Lillian, and more. Names that didn't belong in this house, in this time, in this world. Sarah wanted to cover her ears, but the thread around her wrists pulled tight, forced her hands flat in her lap like a disobedient child. Mara stepped into the circle, arms out. We only live when named. The girl, the bleeding one, raised her hands, showed 10 fingers, each wrapped in a tiny red bow, each bow stitched into the skin. 10 names, 10 dolls, 10 lives. Sarah shook her head. I didn't mean to. But the dolls weren't listening. They began to twitch harder, spasming, until one stood, then another, and another. They walked toward her, one crawling, one limping, one dragging itself by the chin. Each one stopped at her feet. Waited. Name me, one whispered. Say it out loud. She looked down at the smallest one. It was smiling, her own baby teeth sewn into its gums. Sarah choked on her breath. Her mouth opened. A name spilled out. Not hers. Not yet. Eloise. The doll bowed, then vanished. Gone. Thread unspooling in its place like snakeskin. She looked up. More dolls stepped forward, each waiting, each pulling her further away. And Sarah realized every name she gave took one from her, until there'd be nothing left but the voice. And the thread, Mom's voice, but wrong. By morning, the attic was empty. The dolls gone. No thread, no names, no bleeding girl. Just dust and that smell, honey and salt and burnt cloth. Sarah didn't remember crawling back down the ladder. But she woke in her bed, blanket tucked to her chin, Mara in her arms, like nothing had happened. Like everything had. She sat up slowly, skin sore in strange places, wrists raw from invisible thread. Downstairs, the kettle whistled. Her mom's voice floated up the stairwell. Breakfast, sweetie. But something in the way she said it made Sarah freeze. Too cheerful. Too crisp. The shape of the words was right, but not the weight. Like someone had studied her mom, and now was trying to be her. Sarah moved down the stairs one at a time. The smell of pancakes hit her. Not real, though. Too sugary, artificial. Like a scented candle called Mother's Kitchen. She stepped into the kitchen. Her mom stood at the stove, back turned. Hair too smooth, body too still. "Sit down," her mom said. But the voice didn't bend right. Sarah glanced at the floor. No shadow. None. The woman flipped a pancake without looking. Still too still. Sarah backed up. The woman turned. And it wasn't her mom. The face was correct, the smile was perfect. But the eyes, 2 black buttons. Sewn tight. The thing tilted its head. Thread creaked in its neck. "You left the attic door open." Then it took a step toward her. Another. Sarah turned and bolted. Ran up the stairs into her room, slammed the door. Breathing hard. Then the knock. Too gentle. "Sweetie," the voice said again. "Let me in, I made your favorite." Sarah pressed her back to the door. And from beneath it, a tiny thread curled under, red and wet, trying to reach her foot. The dollhouse is real. Sarah didn't open the door. She stayed frozen against it for hours, eyes locked on the thread curling under the crack. It moved like it could see, like it was sniffing for her. By evening, the voice stopped calling. The thread pulled back. And the house went still. Too still. Like everything outside her room had stopped breathing. At dusk, Mara stood again. No one touched her. She simply got up from the shelf where Sarah had thrown her and walked to the closet, opened the door. Inside was no longer clothing or boxes or dust. Inside was the hallway, lit by warm amber lamps, wallpapered in tiny pink roses, just like her childhood dollhouse. Only now it wasn't small. It was life-sized. Sarah stepped forward. Her body felt light, like her bones had forgotten how to carry weight. Inside the hallway was a staircase, then a kitchen, a bedroom, all scaled perfectly but familiar. Too familiar. The layout matched their home, the furniture, even the chipped plate in the corner cabinet. But there were differences, tiny ones. The rocking chair moved on its own, the floorboards pulsed, and every mirror was covered in lace as if they'd been forbidden to look. Then she saw it, the dollhouse version of her room. Inside on the miniature bed lay a doll, porcelain, glass eyes, and wearing Sarah's pajamas. She leaned closer. The doll blinked. Sarah stumbled back. And in every tiny room, other dolls turned, one in the bath, one by the front door. All of them wore her face. All of them watched. Mara appeared in the miniature hallway. She held a sign stitched in thread. "Only one can stay." Sarah tried to run, but the door was gone. Behind her, the doll version of her stood up, smiling, and stepped toward her with arms outstretched. All the dolls turned. They turned together, not slowly, not in sync, but all at once. Like 1,000 invisible wires tugged them by the neck. Each doll snapped to face Sarah, heads rotating too fast, joints creaking, button eyes shining like wet ink. And every single one wore her face. Some smiled, some scowled. One wept tears that hissed as they hit the wooden floor. Another had no mouth at all. Their porcelain fingers began to twitch. Then curl, then reach. Sarah backed away, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her eyelids. Mara stepped forward from the crowd. No longer just a doll, not even pretending. Her smile peeled wider, her arms stretched. Too long now, seams splitting, thread straining. Behind her, the hallway of the dollhouse pulsed. Like it was alive, like it was waiting for something to be born. Sarah turned and ran through the tiny house that wasn't tiny anymore. Kitchen, stairs, mirrorless rooms. But every exit turned her back into the center. Where they waited. Where she waited. The not her, the original. Sarah slammed into herself. The other version. The one who'd been sitting at the attic tea party. Same face, same voice. But something behind the eyes was ancient. Spoke in Sarah's voice, but too perfect, too steady. "You named me, you fed me, you let me grow." The others closed in, their mouths opened. A dozen Sarahs, 100. They whispered in unison. "Only one can stay. Only one can stay. Only one." Sarah screamed, clutched her head. The ground dropped, the dolls vanished, and she was back. On her bedroom floor, Mara lay in pieces, porcelain shattered, thread slack. No blood, no honey, just silence. And the air whispered one last word, "Choose." Someone else in Sarah's skin. The silence felt too clean. No whispers, no threads, no names slithering from behind the walls. Just sunlight leaking through the curtains like nothing had ever happened. Sarah sat up. The floor was cool beneath her hands. Mara, or what was left of her, lay scattered near the closet. One button eye rolled to a stop at Sarah's knee. She didn't scream, didn't cry. Just watched, waited. Nothing moved. But something felt off. She stepped into the hallway. Her mother was in the kitchen humming softly. The song didn't have words, just the same tune from the vent. Sarah cleared her throat. "Mom?" Her mother turned, smiled, but blinked a second too late. That delay, that pause between question and human. "Sweetie, how'd you sleep?" Sarah stared, then touched her own face, her mouth, her skin. Still her, still breathing, still her, right? She walked to the mirror in the hall, looked deep. At first it showed what it should, but when she tilted her head, just slightly, the reflection didn't follow. It lagged. Just a blink, a delay. Then the reflection smiled before she did. She stumbled back. Her hands shook. She opened her mouth, and for a moment, just one terrifying moment, she saw a thin thread stretched tight between her lips, like it was trying to pull shut. But she caught it, held it between two fingers. It snapped. The silence deepened. Behind her, her mother kept humming, as if Sarah had never moved, never vanished, never returned. Then from the top of the stairs came a soft knock. She turned. A girl stood there. Same eyes, same hair, same voice. "Hi," she said. "I think you're in my spot." Sarah couldn't speak, because deep down, she wasn't sure she wasn't. And behind her eyes, something blinked. 3 times.